The wind howled across the barren landscape, carrying with it the scent of burning metal and scorched earth. Yunjin tightened her grip on the plasma rifle slung over her shoulder as she stepped carefully over jagged rocks. Her boots crunched against the dry ground, disturbing small creatures that scurried into cracks beneath her feet. She had been scavenging this wasteland for years, but tonight felt different. The air was heavy with something unfamiliar, a mix of danger and opportunity. In the distance, a faint glow lit up the horizon. It wasn't the usual flicker of lightning or the eerie shimmer of bioluminescent plants native to this planet. No. This light pulsed steadily, like fire eating through steel. Curiosity tugged at her, though caution whispered warnings in her ear. Still, curiosity always won with Yunjin. It was what kept her alive out here when so many others hadn't made it. She moved closer, her dark hair whipping around her face as the wind picked up. When she reached the source of the light, her breath caught in her throat. A massive ship lay sprawled across the terrain, its sleek silver body cracked open like an eggshell. Smoke billowed from the wreckage, and sparks danced wildly where wires were exposed. The craft didn't belong to humans. Its design was too advanced, too alien. Yunjin crouched behind a boulder, scanning the area for movement. If there were survivors, they could be dangerous or valuable. Survivors meant tech, weapons, maybe even food rations if she got lucky. But first, she needed to know who or what she was dealing with. Her sharp eyes caught sight of something near the largest section of debris. At first, she thought it was just another piece of twisted metal, but then it shifted slightly. Slowly, she crept forward, her rifle raised and ready. As she approached, the shape became clearer. It was a figure, tall and muscular, lying motionless on the ground. Its skin shimmered faintly under the dim light, a strange shade of greenish blue. Long limbs sprawled awkwardly, and its armor, what remained of it, was dented and scorched. Yunjin froze, her finger hovering over the trigger. This wasn't human. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't from Earth. For a moment, fear gripped her chest. What if it woke up? What if it attacked her? She could end it right now. One clean shot to the head, and take whatever it had on it. Weapons, gadgets, anything useful would be hers. But then she noticed something else. Blood pooled beneath the creature's side, thick and dark, seeping into the dirt. It wasn't moving, not even twitching. Was it already dead? Or dying? Damn it, Yunjin muttered under her breath. Killing something defenseless didn't sit well with her, no matter how monstrous it looked. Besides, if it really was dying, it might have something worth salvaging before it expired. Steeling herself, she lowered her weapon and knelt beside the alien. Up close, it was even stranger. Its face was angular, almost sculpted, with high cheekbones and a narrow jawline. Two closed eyes rested beneath ridged brows, and its lips were thin, pressed tightly together. Despite its injuries, it radiated strength, like a predator brought low by bad luck, rather than weakness. Suddenly, those eyes snapped open. Yunjin stumbled back, nearly dropping her rifle. The alien's gaze locked onto her, golden irises gleaming unnaturally bright. For a split second, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, the alien raised a trembling hand toward her. "Please," it rasped, its voice deep and gravelly, barely understandable. Yunjin blinked, stunned. It spoke her language, or at least tried to. How was that possible? She shook off her surprise quickly, narrowing her eyes. "What are you?" "In Neverwan. Design a Calibi in pod here for support," she demanded, keeping her tone firm despite the unease creeping into her gut. The alien coughed, wincing in pain. "A warrior?" Yunjin repeated skeptically. She glanced at the wrecked ship again. If this Kalon was a warrior, he sure didn't look very formidable right now. Still, she hesitated. There was something about the way he pleaded, the desperation in his voice. It reminded her of herself, years ago, when she'd begged strangers for help after losing everything. Against her better judgment, she holstered her rifle and grabbed the alien's arm. "Fine," she said sharply. "I'll drag you back to my place. But don't think I'm doing this because I trust you." Kalon didn't respond, either too weak or too confused to argue. With effort, Yunjin hauled him upright, supporting his weight as best she could. He was heavier than she expected, his muscles dense and solid beneath his damaged armor. Every step was a struggle, but she refused to give up. She'd survived worse than this. By the time they reached her bunker, an underground hideout hidden beneath layers of rock and camouflage, it was nearly dawn. Unjin dumped Kalon onto a makeshift cot, ignoring the groan of protest he let out. She rummaged through her supplies, pulling out bandages and antiseptic. Medical treatment wasn't her strong suit, but she knew enough to patch up wounds. As she worked, Kalon watched her silently, his golden eyes never leaving her face. Occasionally, he flinched when she touched a particularly tender spot. But otherwise, he remained still. Once she finished wrapping his injuries, she leaned back, wiping sweat from her brow. "There," she said gruffly. "That should hold until you heal or die, whichever comes first." Kalon tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Why? Save me?" he asked, his voice hoarse but clearer now. Yunjin shrugged. "Don't read too much into it. You're useless to me. Dead. Besides, I figure you might have some fancy alien tech I can take off you once you're back on your feet." For a moment, Kalon looked hurt, but then he nodded slowly. "Fair. Trade." They sat in silence for a while. The only sound, the hum of Unjin's generator, powering the lights. Finally, Kalon broke the quiet. "Thank you. Human. Name's Unjin," she snapped, irritated. "Not human. Unjin," he repeated softly, testing the syllables. "Thank you." She rolled her eyes but didn't argue further. Instead, she stood and walked to the other side of the room, grabbing a bottle of water. Taking a long drink, she glanced back at him. "Get some rest. We'll figure out what to do with you later." Kalon obeyed, closing his eyes and drifting into uneasy sleep. Yunjin watched him for a moment longer, unsure why she felt a pang of guilt. Saving him had been a practical decision, nothing more. Yet, as she turned away, she couldn't shake the feeling that this alien warrior might change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Days passed, and Kalon grew stronger under Yunjin's care. The bunker, though small and cramped, provided a safe haven for both of them. It was dark inside, lit only by dim lamps powered by a salvaged generator. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with tools, spare parts, and scraps of alien technology Yunjin had collected over the years. In one corner, there was a cot where Kalon rested, his wounds slowly healing thanks to her makeshift medical skills. Yunjin spent most of her time tinkering with gadgets or patrolling the area outside the bunker. She didn't trust Kalon completely, not yet. But she also couldn't ignore the fact that he hadn't tried anything suspicious. He barely moved from the cot unless she ordered him to, and even then, he did so cautiously, as if afraid of causing trouble. One evening, after returning from a quick scouting trip, Unjin found Kalon sitting up on the cot. His golden eyes followed her movements as she set down a bundle of scavenged supplies. "You're looking better," she said gruffly, avoiding eye contact. "Thanks. To you," Kalon replied, his voice still rough but clearer than before. He hesitated, then added, "Why help me? You don't owe me anything." Yunjin shrugged, busying herself with sorting through the items she'd brought back. "Like I said before, you're no good to me dead. And besides, I'm not heartless. Even if you are an alien," Kalon tilted his head slightly, confused by her tone. Humans were strange creatures, so fragile, yet capable of such unexpected kindness. Back on his homeworld, mercy was rare, reserved only for those who earned it through honor or loyalty. Yet here was this woman, risking her safety for someone like him. "You're different," he said finally. Yunjin stopped what she was doing and turned to face him. "Different how? You fight. Alone. No clan. No allies. Just yourself." Kalon paused, searching for the right words. "On my world, we value strength in numbers. To stand alone, it's seen as weakness. Well, out here, weakness gets you killed," Yunjin shot back. Her voice carried a sharp edge, and Kalon noticed the way her jaw tightened. "I learned that the hard way." They fell silent again, the tension between them thick enough to cut with a knife. But despite their differences, they began talking more often as the days went on. Yunjin shared bits of her past, the loss of her family, the years spent surviving on this harsh planet. Kalon listened intently, his expression unreadable but attentive. In return, he told her about his people, the Jalthar, a proud warrior race known across the galaxy for their combat prowess. They lived by strict codes of conduct, placing honor above all else. Kalon explained how he had once been a respected member of his clan, until a disagreement with his leaders led to his exile. Now, he wandered the stars, seeking purpose. "I failed my people," Kalon admitted quietly one night. "I disobeyed orders during battle. My actions cost lives." Yunjin frowned, leaning against the wall. "Sounds like you made a mistake. Everyone does, sooner or later. Doesn't mean you deserve to be cast out. It's not just about mistakes," Kalon said. "Among my kind, failure is unforgivable. Especially for someone like me, a warrior." Yunjin didn't respond immediately. She had never cared much for rules or codes. Survival was her only law. Still, she could see the weight of regret in Kalon's eyes. Whatever he had done, it haunted him deeply. Their conversations helped bridge the gap between them. But trust remained a fragile thing. Yunjin kept her rifle close at all times, and Kalon seemed acutely aware of her wariness. Despite this, he continued to prove himself useful. Using knowledge of his own tech, he showed her how to repair some of the damaged equipment she'd scavenged. He taught her how to operate a handheld energy shield, a device far superior to anything she'd ever used. "You learn fast," Kalon remarked one afternoon, as Yunjin successfully blocked a simulated attack using the shield. "Yeah, well, I've had plenty of practice staying alive," she replied, lowering the device. A hint of pride crept into her voice. "Not bad for a human." "Huh?" Kalon smiled faintly. "Not bad at all." As their bond strengthened, so did the sense of danger lurking outside the bunker. Predators roamed the planet freely, drawn to the scent of blood or the sound of movement. Yunjin had faced them many times before, relying on speed and stealth to stay ahead. But now, with Kalon recovering, she worried about protecting 2 lives instead of 1. Her fears came true one stormy night. Thunder rumbled overhead, and rain lashed against the rocky surface above the bunker. Inside, Yunjin and Kalon sat near the generator, its low hum filling the silence. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by the unmistakable growl of a pack of predators. "They're here," Yunjin muttered, grabbing her rifle. She glanced at Kalon, who was already standing, clutching a plasma blade he'd salvaged from his ship. "Stay behind me," Kalon shook his head firmly. "No, we fight together." Before Yunjin could argue, the door burst open, revealing shadowy figures lunging toward them. The predators were large, fanged beasts with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp claws. They snarled viciously, circling the pair. Yunjin fired first, her shots hitting their mark and sending one creature sprawling to the ground. Beside her, Kalon swung his blade with precision, slicing through another attacker. Together, they moved like a single unit, covering each other's blind spots. The battle was chaotic, filled with flashes of light and deafening roars. Yunjin ducked under a swipe from one beast. Rolling to avoid its claws, Kalon stepped in front of her, driving his blade deep into the creature's chest. Blood sprayed across the floor, and the predator collapsed with a final shriek. More beasts poured in, relentless in their assault. Unjin's heart pounded as she reloaded her rifle, her hands steady despite the chaos. Kalon fought fiercely, his movements fluid and calculated. For a moment, she forgot he was an alien. All she saw was a partner willing to risk everything to keep her safe. Finally, the last predator fell, its body twitching before going still. The room was eerily quiet, except for the sound of heavy breathing. Unjin leaned against the wall, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Kalon stood nearby, his blade dripping with blood. "You okay?" she asked, glancing at him. He nodded, meeting her gaze. "Yes. Thanks to you." Yunjin smirked, though relief washed over her features. "Guess we make a pretty good team." Kalon returned her smile, a warmth spreading through him that he hadn't felt in years. Fighting alongside Yunjin reminded him of battles fought with his brothers in arms back home. Only this time, it wasn't duty binding them, it was something deeper. Something neither of them fully understood yet. That night, as they cleaned their weapons and patched up minor injuries, Yunjin realized she no longer saw Kalon as just an alien or a burden. He had become something more, a companion, maybe even a friend. And though she wouldn't admit it aloud, she was glad he was there. The days that followed, the attack brought a new rhythm to life inside the bunker. Unjin and Kalon worked together more closely than ever before, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. What had started as an uneasy alliance was slowly turning into something deeper, something neither of them fully understood but couldn't ignore. Yunjin found herself watching Kalon more often now. His movements were deliberate and precise, whether he was repairing damaged equipment or practicing combat drills. She admired his strength, not just physical but also mental. Despite being exiled from his people, he carried himself with dignity, refusing to let bitterness consume him. It was a trait she respected, even if she didn't say it aloud. For his part, Kalon noticed things about Unjin too. The way her dark eyes softened when she thought no one was looking. The quiet determination in her voice when she spoke about survival, and the faint scars on her hands that told stories of battles fought alone. He admired her resilience, her ability to adapt and endure despite the odds stacked against her. She reminded him of the warriors back home, though she would never admit it. One afternoon, while they were reinforcing the bunker's defenses, Kalon paused mid-task and turned to Yunjin. "Why do you stay here?" he asked suddenly. "This planet, it's dangerous. Surely there are safer places for you." Yunjin shrugged, tightening a bolt on the metal frame. "Safer places don't mean much if you're still running from ghosts," she replied cryptically. "Besides, I know this place. Out there." She gestured vaguely toward the surface above them. "Out there. I'd be lost." Kalon frowned, tilting his head slightly. "You're not lost. You're strong. Stronger than most humans I've met." Yunjin stopped working and looked at him, her expression unreadable. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means..." Kalon hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It means you remind me of my people, of what we value: courage, resourcefulness, loyalty." He paused, then added softly, "And honor." Yunjin snorted, turning back to her work. "Honor doesn't keep you alive out here. Survival does." "Survival isn't everything," Kalon countered. "Living without purpose, that's no life at all." They stared at each other for a long moment, the tension between them shifting subtly. Then Yunjin broke the silence with a dry laugh. "You sound like one of those old philosophers. Honor, purpose. What does any of that matter when you're just trying to make it through another day?" "It matters because it defines who you are," Kalon said firmly. "You may think you're alone, Yunjin, but you're not. Not anymore. Her hands stilled on the tool in her grip, and she glanced at him sideways. There was sincerity in his golden eyes, a depth that made her chest tighten uncomfortably. She wasn't used to anyone speaking to her like this with such conviction, such belief in her worth. Most people saw her as nothing more than a scavenger, someone scraping by on scraps, but Kalon saw something else, something she wasn't ready to confront. To distract herself, Unjin changed the subject. Kalon nodded, letting the conversation drop for now. They shared a simple meal later, sitting cross-legged on the cold floor of the bunker. The food wasn't much, but it was enough to fill their stomachs. As they ate, Kalon picked up a small gadget he'd been tinkering with earlier and handed it to Unjin. "What's this?" she asked, inspecting the device curiously. "A translator," Kalon explained. "I modified it using parts from my ship. It will help us communicate better. You won't have to guess what I'm saying anymore." Unjin raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. "Not bad for an alien," Kalon smirked. "Not bad for a human either." They spent the rest of the evening testing the translator, laughing at the occasional mistranslation and marveling at how well it worked overall. For the first time in weeks, the atmosphere in the bunker felt lighter, almost cheerful. Later that night, after Kalon had fallen asleep, Unjin stepped outside for some fresh air. The rainstorm from earlier had cleared, leaving the sky dotted with stars. She walked to a nearby stream, its waters shimmering under the moonlight. Kneeling beside it, she splashed water onto her face, trying to clear her thoughts. She hadn't expected to feel this way, not about an alien, of all things. Sure, Kalon was different from anyone she'd ever met, but that didn't explain the strange warmth spreading through her chest whenever he smiled at her or praised her skills. Part of her wanted to push those feelings away, to focus solely on survival like she always had. But another part, a part she rarely acknowledged, wanted to hold on to them, to see where they might lead. Lost in thought, Unjin didn't hear Kalon approach until his shadow fell over her. Startled, she turned to see him standing a few feet away, his expression hesitant. "I woke up and saw you were gone," he said quietly. "I was worried." "I'm fine," Unjin replied, standing up. "Just needed some air." Kalon nodded, stepping closer. His gaze lingered on her face, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, unexpectedly, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was gentle, almost reverent, and it sent a shiver down her spine. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Unjin froze, her heart pounding. No one had called her beautiful. In years, not since before her family died. She opened her mouth to protest, to deflect with sarcasm or humor, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply stared at him. Unsure of what to say, Kalon seemed to sense her discomfort and took a step back. "Forgive me," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to offend you." "You didn't," Unjin replied, surprising herself. She hesitated, then added softly, "It's just, no one said that to me in a long time." Kalon's expression softened, and he reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. "Then they were fools," he said simply. A lump formed in Unjin's throat, and she looked away, embarrassed by the sudden rush of emotion. This was dangerous territory, letting herself feel, letting herself care. But as Kalon's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, she realized she didn't want to pull away. Not yet. They stayed like that for a while, standing by the stream under the starlit sky. Neither of them spoke. Words weren't necessary. In that moment, surrounded by the vast emptiness of the alien planet, they found comfort in each other's presence. When they finally returned to the bunker, Unjin lay awake for hours, replaying the evening in her mind. She knew things were changing between them, evolving into something she couldn't and didn't want to control. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. The fragile peace Yunjin and Kalon had built inside the bunker shattered one fateful morning. The air was unusually still, heavy with an ominous silence that made Yunjin uneasy. She stepped outside to check the perimeter, her rifle slung over her shoulder. As she scanned the horizon, a glint of movement caught her eye. A group of figures approaching from the distance. Her heart sank as she recognized them. Scavengers, humans. But not like her. These were ruthless mercenaries who roamed the planet in search of alien tech and survivors to sell to corrupt corporations. They weren't interested in fairness or mercy. They took what they wanted by force. Yunjin hurried back inside, her mind racing. "We've got company," she said sharply, waking Kalon from a light sleep. "Scavengers. About 10 of them." Kalon sat up immediately, his golden eyes narrowing. "Are they dangerous?" "Very," Yunjin replied grimly. "They'll kill us if they find us. Or worse, capture us. Especially you." She gestured at him, emphasizing his alien appearance. "You're worth more alive than dead." Kalon clenched his fists, frustration evident on his face. "Then we fight." "No," Yunjin snapped. "There's too many of them. If we stay here, we're dead. We need to run." Kalon hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. He trusted Yunjin's judgment, even if it went against his warrior instincts. Together, they gathered their supplies, weapons, food, and tools, and prepared to flee. But the scavengers were faster than expected. Just as they were about to leave, loud voices echoed outside the bunker. Heavy boots stomped across the rocky surface above them. Yunjin cursed under her breath, realizing they'd been discovered. "They're here," she whispered urgently. "Stay behind me." Before Kalon could respond, the door burst open, revealing a group of armed men led by a burly figure with a scarred face. His cold gaze swept over the room, landing first on Yunjin, then on Kalon. "Well, well," the leader sneered, stepping inside. "Looks like we hit the jackpot. An alien warrior. And his little pet human." Yunjin raised her rifle, aiming it squarely at the man's chest. "Back off. You don't want trouble." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that grated on Yunjin's nerves. "Oh, sweetheart. We live for trouble. Now put the gun down before someone gets hurt." Kalon moved to stand beside Yunjin, his posture tense and ready for battle. "Don't hurt her," he growled, his voice low and threatening. The scavengers laughed again, clearly amused by the sight of the towering alien protecting a human woman. "How sweet," the leader mocked. "Looks like the big bad alien has gone soft." Yunjin tightened her grip on the rifle, her finger hovering over the trigger. She knew they were outnumbered, but surrender wasn't an option. Not while she still had breath in her body. Suddenly, chaos erupted. One of the scavengers lunged forward, trying to grab Yunjin's weapon. She fired instinctively, the shot hitting him square in the chest. The others retaliated, opening fire on both her and Kalon. Kalon sprang into action, using his superior strength and speed to disarm 2 attackers in quick succession. He fought fiercely, his plasma blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. But there were too many of them. And soon he found himself cornered. Yunjin fought alongside him, her movements swift and calculated. She dodged bullets and returned fire, taking down several scavengers with clean shots. Despite her skill, she couldn't hold them off forever. A stray bullet grazed her arm, sending a sharp pain shooting through her body. She stumbled, momentarily distracted. Seeing her falter, Kalon made a split-second decision. With a roar, he charged at the leader, knocking him to the ground. The other scavengers turned their attention to him, giving Yunjin a chance to escape. "No!" she shouted, realizing what he was doing. "Kalon, stop!" But it was too late. The scavengers overwhelmed him, pinning him to the ground. The leader stood up, brushing dirt off his jacket as he approached Kalon. "Good job, alien. he sneered. Now you're coming with us. Yunjin watched helplessly as they dragged Kalon away, binding his hands with thick cords. Her vision blurred with anger and fear, but she forced herself to stay calm. She couldn't save him now, not without a plan. Once the scavengers were gone, Yunjin collapsed onto the floor, clutching her injured arm. Her mind raced as she replayed the scene over and over in her head. Kalon had sacrificed himself for her, just as she'd once saved him. The irony wasn't lost on her. For hours, she sat in silence, staring at the empty space where Kalon had been. Then, slowly, determination replaced despair. She wouldn't let them take him. Not without a fight. Using the scavenge tech Kalon had taught her to use, Yunjin began devising a rescue plan. She modified a handheld EMP device to disable the scavengers' weapons and rigged together a smoke bomb using chemicals from her supplies. It wasn't much, but it was enough to level the playing field. By nightfall, she was ready. Armed with her rifle, the EMP device, and a fierce resolve, Yunjin set out to track the scavengers. Their trail wasn't hard to follow. They left behind footprints and discarded trash as they marched toward their base. When she finally reached the location, she crouched behind a rock, observing the scene. The scavengers had set up camp in a clearing, their tents glowing faintly in the dark. In the center of the camp, Kalon was tied to a pole, his head bowed and his body bruised from beatings. Yunjin's heart ached at the sight of him, but she pushed her emotions aside. Now wasn't the time for weakness. Taking a deep breath, she activated the EMP device, sending a pulse of energy rippling through the area. The scavengers' weapons sputtered and died, leaving them defenseless. Seizing the moment, Yunjin threw the smoke bomb into the camp, creating a thick cloud of gray mist. Chaos broke out as the scavengers scrambled to regroup, coughing and shouting orders. Using the confusion to her advantage, Yunjin slipped into the camp and cut Kalon free. "Come on," she urged, pulling him to his feet. "We need to move." Kalon blinked, disoriented but relieved to see her. "Yunjin, you came for me." "Of course I did," she snapped, though her tone softened slightly. "Let's argue about it later. Right now, we need to get out of here." Together, they fled into the darkness, the scavengers' angry shouts fading behind them. Once they were far enough away, Yunjin stopped to catch her breath. Leaning against a tree, Kalon stood beside her, his injuries obvious but manageable. "You shouldn't have risked yourself for me," he said quietly. "I'm not worth it." Yunjin rolled her eyes, though a small smile tugged at her lips. "Shut up, Kalon. You're worth more than you think." They shared a look, wordless understanding passing between them. For the first time since meeting, they truly felt like partners, not just allies brought together by circumstance, but two people willing to risk everything for each other. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they continued their journey back to the bunker. The road ahead would be difficult, but for now, they had each other, and that was enough. The journey back to the bunker was slow and painful, but neither Yunjin nor Kalon complained. Every step reminded them of how close they had come to losing everything and how much they now meant to each other. Kalon leaned on Yunjin for support, his body battered and weak from the scavengers' torture. Despite his injuries, he refused to give up, driven by a newfound determination to protect her just as she had protected him. When they finally reached the bunker, Yunjin helped Kalon inside and laid him on the cot. She tended to his wounds carefully, applying antiseptic and wrapping bandages around his cuts and bruises. Her hands moved with practiced precision, but there was gentleness in her touch that hadn't been there before. "You saved me," Kalon said softly, breaking the silence. His voice was hoarse, but his golden eyes shone with gratitude. "Why did you risk yourself like that?" "Kalon," Yunjin paused, looking down at him. For a moment, she considered brushing off the question with sarcasm or a joke, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he looked at her with trust, admiration, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. Or maybe it was the realization that she no longer felt the need to hide behind walls of indifference. "Because I care about you," she admitted quietly, her cheeks flushing slightly. It wasn't easy for her to say those words aloud, especially after years of shutting people out. But with Kalon, things were different. He made her want to be better, to open up, even if it scared her. Kalon smiled faintly, reaching out to take her hand. "And I care about you, Yoonjin, more than I can put into words." They stayed like that for a while, holding onto each other's hands as the weight of their shared experiences settled between them. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the generator and the faint glow of the lamps, they found solace in each other's presence. Over the next few days, Kalon regained some of his strength, though his recovery was slower this time. The scavengers had left deep scars, not just physical ones, but emotional ones too. Nightmares plagued him, memories of captivity and pain surfacing whenever he closed his eyes. On those nights, Unjin would sit beside him, speaking softly until he drifted back to sleep. One evening, as they sat together eating a modest meal of dried rations, Unjin brought up a topic they had avoided discussing since their escape. "What happens now?" she asked, her tone casual but her eyes searching his face. "Do you have somewhere else to go? Somewhere safe?" Kalon hesitated, setting down his food. "I don't know," he admitted. "My people. They wouldn't welcome me back. Not after what I've done." Yoonjin frowned, leaning forward. "You mean getting yourself captured? That's not exactly a crime." "It's more than that," Kalon explained. "I disobeyed orders during battle, costing lives. My clan sees that as unforgivable. Even if I went back, I'd always be an outsider." "Well, screw them," Yoonjin said bluntly, crossing her arms. "If they can't see how honorable you are, then they're idiots. You saved my life, Kalon. You fought for me when you didn't have to. That's worth more than any stupid code of conduct." Kalon chuckled weakly, touched by her loyalty. "You truly believe that?" "I do," she replied firmly. Then, after a pause, she added softly, "Besides, I'm not ready to let you go yet." Her words hung in the air, carrying a weight neither of them had acknowledged until now. For weeks, they had danced around their feelings, focusing on survival and practicality. But now, alone in the safety of the bunker, they could no longer ignore the connection growing between them. Kalon reached out, cupping Yoonjin's cheek in his hand. "Then I'll stay," he said simply, "for as long as you'll have me." "Fee?" End quote. Yoonjin's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she thought about pulling away. But instead, she leaned into his touch, closing her eyes as warmth spread through her chest. "Good," she murmured, "because I'm not letting you leave." That night, they shared their first real kiss. A tender, hesitant moment that quickly turned passionate. It was awkward at first, given their differences in size and anatomy, but neither cared. All that mattered was the emotion behind it, the love, trust, and unspoken promise to face whatever came next together. In the days that followed, they began making plans for the future. Staying on the planet wasn't an option. The scavengers would return eventually, and they couldn't risk another confrontation. Using parts salvaged from Kalon's crashed ship, they worked tirelessly to repair its engines and navigation systems. It was slow, painstaking work, but they tackled it side by side, their bond strengthening with every challenge they overcame. Finally, after weeks of effort, the ship was ready. Standing outside the bunker one last time, Yoonjin took a deep breath, memorizing the landscape that had been her home for so long. She had spent years surviving here, alone and afraid. Now, she was leaving not because she had to, but because she wanted to. "You ready?" Kalon asked, standing beside her. Yoonjin nodded, turning to face him. "Yeah, let's get out of here." Together, They boarded the ship, taking one final look at the planet before launching into the stars. As they soared through space, leaving the desolate world behind, Yunjin felt a sense of freedom she hadn't known was possible. For the first time in her life, she wasn't running from something, she was running toward something. Toward hope, adventure, and a future with Kalon. Their destination was uncertain. They might search for Kalon's surviving kin, hoping to find acceptance among his people, or they might strike out on their own, exploring the galaxy and carving out a new life together. Either way, they faced the unknown, side by side, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. As the ship entered hyperspace, Yunjin leaned her head against Kalon's shoulder, smiling softly. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" Kalon wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. And for the first time in years, Yunjin believed it. Whatever the future held, she knew they could handle it, as long as they had each other.